Chinese hopping vampires, or the Qing dynasty roots behind the Jiangshi legend. Now, a cult obsession thanks to Hong Kong horror movies of the 1980s and the 1990s, the legend of the hopping vampire was first detailed in a series of supernatural reflection compiled between 1789 and 1798 by Ji Hualong, also known as Ji Yun, and collected in the 1800s volume entitled Yue Huodang Biji. I know I've butchered that name. Its English language translation being the rather beautiful Random Notes at the Cottage of the Close Scrutiny. Referred to as Jiangshi, meaning hard or stiff, Jiangshi was a word originally used to mean corpse. This corpse, or cursed soul you could say, was stiffened by rigor mortis and unable to move beyond a hop, like some undead pogo stick, with its arms stretched out in front of it for balance. The skin was greenish white, often in a state of decay, and they were most commonly depicted in an officious uniform of a Qing dynasty bureaucrat. Held upon against the folk terrors of Western popular culture, the hopping vampire is closer to a shambling zombie than a erudite castle-dwelling count. But the growing influence of Western horror movies and the enduring homegrown myth of the hungry ghost introduced blood-sucking to the Jiangshi repertoire. As for all folkloric beasties, the Jiangshi accord a litany of details. They can be repelled by mirrors, the call of the rooster, the hooves of a black donkey, and the wood of a peach tree. While the deceased devilish transformation can be caused by improper burial, magical rituals, and suicide or possession, the real origin story is almost as bizarre. It was common during the Qing dynasty 1644 to 1912 for workers or migratory workers labouring far from the ancestral home to be returned for proper burial. When they passed away, lest their departed spirits grow homesick. Lacking the funds for transportation, the grieving families would pay a corpse driver to do the job with necromancy. This corpse driver was said to be magically bind the wrists, ankles and knees of the cadaver, forcing it upright, and then with a long stick would prod and poke the corpse so that they hopped home under their own steam. Other accounts talk about the rhythmic banging of a drum providing direction instead. These hopping corpses would travel at night to minimise the decay, while the priest leading this rang a bell to deter onlookers to gaze upon the Jiangshi was considered bad luck, even before they took to a snacking on human blood. These rows of recently deceased were actually transported on bamboo poles, lined up like old shirts on a clothes rack, and carried through the night on the shoulders of two men. The flexing of a bamboo poles as they passed by created an illusion of the corpse bouncing when viewed from afar. Other accounts of the corpse drivers detail a single figure in heavy robes, his face concealed by mourning masks, who carried the cadaver on the backs, a man in front lighting the way with a single lantern and calling out obstacles to poor chap at the rear. Already cloaked in superstition and mystery, it's not hard to see how this peculiar legend came to pass, inspiring ghost stories, horror movies and anime alike. While most Jiangshi share the same type of attire, body posture and mode of movement, variations also exist among these creatures. For example, some of these beings look like a normal human, while others are little more decomposed as a result of being dead for a longer period of time. Yet others have been depicted with sharp teeth, long nails, and emitting a green, phosphorescent glow in some versions of the story. Jiangshi are said to be able to grow stronger, thus allowing them to acquire skills such as flying and transforming into wolves. As mentioned before, there are apparently many ways for a dead body to turn into a Jiangshi. For instance, according to one version of the myth, a Jiangshi is created when a person suffers a violent death. For instance, suicide, hanging or drowning. Such deaths cause the soul to be unable to leave the body, thus resulting to a reanimated corpse. Another belief is that the corpse may become a Jiangshi if it's not given a proper burial. For instance, if a burial was postponed after death, a dead body may become restless and return to haunting the living. Another supposed way of a corpse turning into a Jiangshi is that it fails to decompose even after burial. Corpses that have been struck by a bolt of lightning or hopped over by an animal, particularly cats, are also said to turn into this undead creature. One would say, how do you defeat a hopping vampire? Well, the Jiangshi are commonly said to come out at night. To sustain themselves as well as to grow more powerful, the Jiangshi would steal the ki, meaning the life force, of living victims. Well, the living, however, are not entirely defenseless against these creatures. There seems to be several ways to defeat a Jiangshi, and these include blood of a black dog, gluttonous rice, showing it a mirror because it feels its reflection, chicken eggs, throwing money on the floor so they'll stop and count it, the urine of a virgin boy, holding one's breath, sticking a Taoist talisman on its forehead, and a rooster crowing. Though, as mentioned before, during the 1980s, the Jiangshi was a popular subject in the film industry of Hong Kong. While these undead were often featured as antagonists, they have sometimes been depicted as more human-like and at times even served as comic relief.